Hi, I run the company Black Global Gaming, and I've spent the better part of 2 years doing game development, so I thought I'd make a video to showcase my journey. So a little bit of background before we start. I've always been fascinated by VR. I think it's one of the best forms of gaming, and I've been hooked ever since I played it. So, since I was hooked on it, I always wanted to make a game for it. So like an idiot with zero experience, I wanted to make a VR game for my first game. Now, what game did I want to make? Well, at the time, I was a huge fan of Clash Royale, so I decided to try and make Clash Royale in VR. I didn't get pretty far and I gave up when I couldn't get a bow working because I had little to no experience. After that, I stopped making games as it wasn't as fun as I thought. But roughly 4 months later, I decided I wanted to get back into game development. I also decided to switch to flat screen game development as it would be easier. For the start of my journey as a new flat screen game developer, I joined a game jam as I really wanted to finish a game. So I worked on a very simple wave shooter game that I was actually really proud of, especially since it was my first game. I worked on it for about 1 month after the game jam before I decided I wanted to work on another game. Now here's the stage of my game dev journey where I would work on a project for a little bit, but then get bored and switch to a new project. So I worked on a lot of random games. For example, I worked on a mesh generation for an RPG game I wanted to make, a competitive snowball shooter, and a parkour game, and a few more which aren't finished or I deleted. After I was bored of the parkour game, I was like, hey, I think I have enough game dev experience, so I'm going to try and make a VR game again. Now, making a VR game is a little bit more difficult than a normal game, so I struggled a lot with my first VR game. My first VR game I worked on was a simple sandbox city destruction type game. This game was a lot of fun to make, but after a while I got bored of it and decided to switch projects, for like the 5th time. Now I've been playing a lot of Elite Dangerous with the HOTAS setup at the time, so I decided I wanted to make a VR game with spaceships in it. I thought about a game that I can make that hadn't been done before, and came up with the idea with spaceship racing. I thought it would be easy and this would finally be the first VR game that I would actually release. So I got to work on it, and it was hard. I suck at Unity's physics, so trying to get that to work and the rotation, it was just a nightmare. But I had a very simple game built, and I posted online to see what people would think. I got mostly positive feedback. So I continued to work on it for another 2 weeks, but just got bored of it and didn't want to work on it again. So I decided to switch projects. Again. I saw that there was a VR game jam, and decided I would join it and finally release a VR game, no matter what. But when the game jam ended, my game was nowhere close to being done, so I didn't submit it. But I had a lot of motivation, so I continued to work on the game, soon to be called Lurking Shadows. I made a Discord server so I could showcase sneak peeks and do devlogs to gain some motivation. And after about 100 plus hours working on the game and a few project corruptions, the game was finally out on AppLab. And it kinda sucked, not gonna lie. The game was not very good. I would say a solid 6 out of 10. But I had made it all by myself, so I was super proud of it. I continued to work on it after release and reached out to a few YouTubers to see if they could add it to one of their free VR game videos. And it actually got added to quite a few popular videos. So I continued to work on the game, and it did quite well to my standards. It got around 750 installs before I stopped working on it around the beginning of October. But as of today, or roughly 6 months after release, the game has gotten 3,400 installs, which is really good, especially for my first mediocre VR game. It has a 4-star rating, but I feel like it deserves that. Now, around October, I stopped working on Lurking Shadows as it was not that fun to work on, and I wanted to work on something new. So, I had my Discord server vote on which game they wanted me to make next. Now, I was betting on a multiplayer horror game to win, but to my surprise, a Rage Room and VR game won. I wasn't mad, but I was a little bit surprised. Now, for this game, I wanted it to be an amazing free game with some cheap paid DLCs so I can make some money. So I decided to hire a 3D modeler, a music person, and buy some software in the Unity Asset Store to make this game better and to speed up development. Now, I wasn't really motivated for the first month, so nothing really got done. But around mid-November, I decided to work on the game full throttle, and I got quite a lot of stuff done. I was able to release the game around January 10th after lots of hard work. Now, at launch, the game was not very good. There was a bug where you couldn't break anything because I accidentally made a variable in the code a 5 instead of a 2. You know, normal game dev stuff. But I continued to work on the game after launch and was able to release 3 DLCs, as I wanted to see if I could make a little bit of money for all my hard work. The DLCs that I released was a map DLC, which I think is the worst of the DLCs, but it's still pretty fun for $1. A sandbox DLC, which I spent too much time on and is really cool for $1. And a weapons DLC, which in my opinion is the best one, and I probably should have sold it for $5, but it is also $1. Now, for the part that you've all been waiting for, how much did I make? Now, I spent roughly $100 on the game, and I made $126 as of March 12th, 2024. But Meta takes a 30% cut, so I've actually made roughly $88.20, which means I've lost $11.80. I sold a lot of copies of the DLC, but since they are all for $1, I haven't made a lot of money. But for the 3 months that the game has been released, it has gotten roughly 5,000 installs and has a 4.9 star rating, which I feel like is really good for my second game. So here's my ending note. If you are making a game solely to make money, don't. It's not worth it at all. It is so much better to make a game for fun and for the experience people can play than trying to make a profit and get rich. But now you're probably wondering, what's next for Black Lobo Gaming? And to that, I have a few ideas, but I can't share any of them yet. But I hope to have something to share really soon, so stay tuned for that. Thank you all for watching, and have an amazing day.